All right, guys.
Interesting.
Legislative Week in Review. You ready?
Yes. Yeah, we're ready.
Okay. All right. So for this week in the Legislative Week in Review, I did want to start off by highlighting that HR 7440, the Hong Kong Autonomy Act, which I talked about a couple weeks ago. Like I said, it had passed in the House and the Senate, and it has been signed by the president on July 14th. So we officially have sanctions on Chinese nationals and banks. So we shall see how this is going to affect. Obviously, we have the issues with the trade war going on with China right now, and China itself has put sanctions against us. And so I'm sure it's just going to continue to be some sort of tit for tat when it comes to sanctions between these two countries. And we have already seen how the tensions with China have been politicized to the point where we have Biden and Trump going against each other because neither one is tough enough on China, apparently. All right.
Yep.
And then
and of course, always saying, the use of sanctions, we can just talk about that, generally hurts the people and not the governments. It can have horrific effect on people across the world.
Well, what is it? I mean, to impose sanctions with respect to foreign persons, so it looks like it's directed at individuals rather than states. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. But it's people that are designated by these unelected like bureaucrats, you know what I'm saying? It's all shadowy type of information that they can just go after whoever. I just think that us messing with internal affairs in China is a very dangerous line, and especially what is the saying? People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Yeah, and we live in a massive glass mansion.
Well, I think it's a losing proposition from the beginning, because just thinking that somehow you're going to get the Chinese to reform, the Chinese are going to do whatever they're going to do with Hong Kong. Obviously they are interested in keeping it going as a kind of a kind of a micro capitalist engine within China. I think they just don't want to have the unrest that you see in the Western world. They don't want to see protests and all that kind of stuff. But we're never going to, I don't think we're really going to influence. We're just going to make them, there's just going to be more, what should I say? They're going to be more recalcitrant in their position. They're not going to reform because of outside pressure from the U.S. I don't think it's really going to make any difference. So I think it's just kind of posturing and diverting attention.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. This is all, it's been politicized, but I think it's very dangerous when you're using sanctions, which to me are an act of war, right? So you're using sanctions to just have these political one-ups on other countries, and I don't think that is how foreign policy should be conducted. I think that's very dangerous. And it's like I said, he's going to take this and he's going to say, look how tough I am on China. I signed this Hong Kong Autonomy Act. And this is something that, obviously the Democrats have been very much behind this. This was something that I think in June is when this was the first bill on this was introduced. And July 14th, it's signed into law by the president.
And what are the obligations of China with respect to Hong Kong? What are they talking about there?
What do you mean?
It says the erosion of certain, there are the sanctions against foreign persons involved in the erosion of certain obligations of China with respect to Hong Kong. So it was like human rights obligations because they've signed, an agreement or whatever. I mean, they could just come back and say, well, yeah, U.S. has violated human rights, whatever.
That's what I said. That's what I'm saying, that, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. We have no right to be trying to deal with their internal affairs. That we should not be doing that.
It's not going to change
I'm not saying that China is this angel. I'm not defending China at all. What I'm saying is that I just don't think that this is how our geopolitics should be conducted.
Well, China learned from the Tiananmen, uprising in 1989, right? So like, which they violently suppressed. So this one, they kind of waited it out, but they're taking advantage of COVID and everything to go after some of these organizers now, probably, right? But
Right.
things are just going to continue. I know someone, as a matter of fact, who's going there like in 2 or 3 weeks to move to Hong Kong. He's in the finance sector. He lives
Wow.
in the UK now, and he's going there to start a new job in Hong Kong. So stuff is going to continue. It's just life continues, and it's not really. He said on the ground, it's not really nothing has changed that much. It's just like it's still Hong Kong.
Although Hong Kong used to be this big economic center for China, and now it is not, right?
Well,
Like,
because it's been eclipsed by other economic centers in Hong Kong. Now you have, in China, excuse me.
well,
But
not just that, but it's also because of these riots, and which is supposedly one of the reasons why, because it has been said that these protests are backed by CIA and intelligence agencies, right? And so supposedly this has been because they wanted to destabilize the
right.
Chinese economy. This
Well,
was a
yeah,
blow, supposedly.
the U.S. has a tradition ever since the 40s, post World War, in post World War period in the 40s, like in Greece and Italy, of supporting, their side in the elections and everything. But the problem with that is that, it discredits any authentic opposition movements, right? So, like immediately, just like here, they can say, about Martin Luther King, J. Edgar Hoover could say, well, you knew some communists, so therefore you're a communist, and this is a communist-backed operation, whereas in fact it's really an authentic, genuine movement that's a popular movement that's
Or how
protesting.
you have people questioning Black Lives Matter because they're saying that supposedly it's a Soros-backed movement. So, once Soros's name is attached to any of these things, it's like attaching
Well,
Hillary Clinton's name to something.
I was
That's
in
it.
I was
It's
in
over.
downtown Boston last week. I opened the back of my car and I had a Black Lives Matter like homemade sign in the back of the car. And this guy walks by and he says, "Doesn't my life matter?" And I go, "Well, yeah." I said, "Your life matters." He said, "Black Lives Matter. That's a Marxist movement." And I said, I kind of was teasing. I said, "Well, what's wrong with that?" I said, "Is that
Yeah.
bad?" And he goes, "Yes, we need God. We need to go back to God." And then but just some guy in the street like was spewing this narrative that it's like a Marxist,
Yeah.
i.e. Russian or something, like
Mhm.
socialist, godless, atheistic, going to put us all in camps movement. So that's what this it was literally the man on the street. And that's what he said to me. So
Yeah.
that was
Yeah, so
interesting.
that's why I'm like iffy when it comes to the protest there. I am someone who believes that it's about the people that live there. If there is an organic uprising, obviously there has to be some sort of unrest amongst the people for there to be so many
Right.
people showing up to these protests. So I'm not negating that obviously there's something going on there, but some of the tactics that are being used, even it's being seen here that some of the tactics that these protest groups, they're learning the tactics that are being used in Hong Kong and they're starting to use them here. But again, these are tactics that supposedly these intelligence agencies have given to these leaders of these protests over in Hong Kong. So essentially, it's like the people here, the protesters here, are learning the CIA tactics and using them here. So
Well, it's like the Maidan in Kiev, like where you had uh, uh, what John McCain was going to Kiev, egging on these protesters, and they had legitimate grievances, but it was like co-opted by, let's make Ukraine a Western country. Let's eventually make them a member of NATO. It was a part of that geopolitical strategy. So it was kind of like, we're going to use you to get what we want.